Don't you just love the Phalaenopsis orchid? With stunning arches of blooms and colors that range from pristine white to soft buttery yellow to a vivid purple, it's easy to see why this tropical native, commonly called the moth orchid, has quickly become the #1 houseplant in the entire world. Yet, even with their rise to popularity, there's still a lot of questions about how to care for these plants. What kind of light do they need? How often should I water them? Do they even need fertilizer? Well, today I'm going to answer these questions and more as I share with you my tips on how to care for the Phalaenopsis orchid. Let's go! So here we are back at my home with one of my own Phalaenopsis orchids. And I want to share with you the 4 things that your orchid needs in order to keep it happy, healthy, and reblooming for years to come. These needs are light, air, water, and fertilizer. Let's start with light. The Phalaenopsis orchid wants bright but indirect sunlight, so place it on an east or south facing window. I recommend don't place it right on the window sill, but a few feet in. This is because the sun's rays can be so bright that it can burn the leaves, causing an unsightly black mark to appear. Up in our bedroom, I have it right next to my bed. It gets great southeast sunlight, bright, indirect, just what it wants. Next, let's talk about air. And I'd like to break this section into 3 parts: air temperature, air humidity, and air circulation around the roots. Now, the Phalaenopsis orchid is an epiphyte, meaning that it grows on trees and not in the ground. They're native to the Philippines and Indonesia, where they receive a constant warm temperature and lots of great humidity. So this is the same kind of environment we want to create for them here in our homes. So how do we do that? Well, let's start with temperature. A great reminder is that if you're comfortable, so is your orchid. They like a temperature between 64 degrees and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Now let's move on to humidity in the air. A great and easy way to create the humidity that your Phalaenopsis needs is to group it together with other houseplants. Just like this. I have a ZZ plant and a mother-in-law Tom's plant, also called a snake plant. Just set these all near each other. Their collective transpiration, which is a release of water through the stomata, will provide your orchid with the perfect humidity that it wants. Now let's talk about air circulation around the root system. Now, when you first purchase your orchid, make sure that it has adequate drainage in the bottom of the pot, just like mine does. You also might want to consider purchasing a decorative pot made specifically for orchids. It has holes all throughout. Just place your orchid in this decorative pot with the holes, and it'll be happy and healthy in your home. Now let's water our orchid together. First step is to remove the orchid from its decorative pot. I like to place mine over the sink while I'm doing this process. I have my water, and I'm going to water all around, being very careful not to get any water in the crown of the plant. It's important to do this because if you do get water in the crown of the plant and it sits there for an extended period of time, it's going to cause crown rot, which will eventually kill your orchid. So I'm going to turn my orchid around, and I'm going to repeat this process on the back. And you'll see that the water is able to drain right through the growing medium. I want to completely saturate the root system. Now what I want to do is make sure this water has completely drained out from my plant. I don't want to stick this plant back into its decorative pot until it's not dripping at all. So there we have it. There's another choice here, and that's to submerge your plastic pot into a basin of water. Once again, if you choose to use this method, just be sure not to get any excess water in the crown of the plant. Now let's discuss fertilizer. When you water your orchid, you'll also want to fertilize it to give it the nutrients that it needs. For this, you first need to consider what kind of growing medium you're using. If you're using fir bark, that uses a lot of nitrogen in the breakdown process, you're going to need to replace that nitrogen via the fertilizer. That's what I'm growing in. So the fertilizer I use is this fertilizer by Miracle-Gro because it's a 30-10-10 fertilizer. This will help give my plant the nitrogen it needs because of the fir bark. Now, if you're growing in moss, you don't need to worry about this. You can stick with a 10-10-10 fertilizer. Now, across the board, a great thing to remember is to fertilize weekly. This means fertilize half strength every week. And give your plant a break every once in a while. About every 4 weeks, don't give it any fertilizer. This will allow excess salt buildup to flush right through your plant, giving you a great fresh start. Now that we've gone over general care of our orchid, let's talk about what to do to get it to rebloom and what to do once our flower spike is completely bloomed out. Let's pretend that this spike is completely done blooming and we're ready to cut it back. Well, there's a good chance that we can get it to rebloom if we cut it in the proper location. We want to look at the nodes on the stem. I'm going to count up 2 to 3 nodes. 1, 2, 3. I notice that the third node is more swollen than the second node, which means that this node gives me a better chance of getting it to rebloom from this current point. So I would take my sterilized pruners and I would cut right above that node. There's a great chance that it will rebloom right off this node for me. After that second spike is finished blooming, cut that stem all the way down. Pretty soon, a new stem and a new leaf will appear. Well, there you have all my tips for caring for the Phalaenopsis orchid in your home. Armed with these tools, you'll be sure to have success, and your hard work will be rewarded with stunning spikes of blooms for years to come.